Title: The Rise of S.L.A.M, Synthetic Labor and Automated Manpower in the 2030s. Section 1, Introduction. The Age of Economic Inputs. Every era has its elemental input, the raw force that powers production, drives markets, and reshapes society. In the early 20th century, it was oil, the black liquid that fueled cars, wars, and empires. By the late 20th century, capital had taken the throne, with financial institutions and credit systems becoming the lifeblood of growth. In the early 2000s, compute emerged as the essential fuel, from microchips to cloud infrastructure, giving rise to trillion-dollar tech empires. Now, as we edge into the 2030s, the world is undergoing another seismic shift. A new input is asserting dominance, not natural, not financial, not purely digital, but synthetic, programmable, mechanical, and intelligent. This is the age of synthetic labor and automated manpower, or S.L.A.M. S.L.A.M represents a convergence of disciplines: robotics, artificial intelligence, motion control, perception systems, and massive compute infrastructure. It is the industrialization of autonomy, not just thinking machines, but doing machines. These systems do not merely simulate intelligence. They replace tasks, roles, and eventually jobs across both blue and white-collar domains. Just as we once mapped energy pipelines and financial networks, we must now chart the rise of robotic labor pipelines, global supply chains that manufacture, deploy, and operate the future's synthetic workforce. This exposition traces the emergence of this new economic input, identifies the companies and technologies at its core, and considers the implications for capital, labor, and civilization itself. Section 2, Defining the S.L.A.M thesis. The acronym S.L.A.M stands for Synthetic Labor and Automated Manpower. It is not merely a catchy label, it is a conceptual framework for understanding the next dominant economic input. Where previous inputs like oil or compute served as fuel or processing layers, S.L.A.M represents the embodiment of work. It is labor disembodied, recoded, and redeployed through machines, algorithms, and networks. It is about turning jobs into protocols, motion into code, and productivity into autonomous flows. Let's break it down. Synthetic labor refers to the replication of human labor tasks using intelligent machines, often with a human-like interface. These include humanoid robots that can perform physical tasks like lifting, walking, carrying, and interacting with human-designed environments. AI assistants that perform customer service, writing, legal, or administrative work at scale, and simulated or virtual workers such as avatars or digital agents deployed in gaming, retail, or support scenarios. The term synthetic refers to the design principle. The labor doesn't come from humans, but mimics their capabilities closely enough to replace or augment them. Automated manpower extends the idea of synthetic labor into more industrial, high-volume, or militarized settings. These systems are not designed to mimic humans. They're designed to outperform them in speed, durability, precision, or autonomy. Examples include warehouse robots, autonomous drones for surveillance, delivery or warfare, self-driving vehicles, factory line robotics with vision and adaptive behavior, and construction or mining automation platforms. This is not labor as we know it. It is an entirely new workforce, built from motion planning, spatial modeling, and neural networks rather than biology. Why now? Because we are seeing a convergence driven by mature AI models with world understanding and control capabilities, falling sensor and actuator costs, making humanoids and drones viable at scale, edge compute plus cloud orchestration, enabling real-time remote labor coordination, demographic decline in many advanced economies, creating labor shortages, and geopolitical pressure to reshore manufacturing and build sovereign automation stacks. S.L.A.M is arriving not just as a technical revolution, but as a macroeconomic necessity. To qualify as a S.L.A.M company, an entity must either directly produce or deploy synthetic labor systems or provide critical infrastructure that powers autonomous labor, such as chips, cloud systems, or AI brains. This includes robotics hardware manufacturers, advanced chip makers like NVIDIA, AMD, or TSMC, foundation model developers like OpenAI or Anthropic, cloud hyperscalers supporting labor AI workloads such as AWS or Azure, autonomous vehicle companies, drone and defense robotics firms, and motion intelligence platforms. It is a broad but purposeful categorization, capturing the supply chain of synthetic labor from brain to body to deployment. Section 3, Historical Context. Market kings by input type. To understand why S.L.A.M matters, and why now, we must first zoom out. Every dominant stock market era has been shaped by a particular economic input that served as the lifeblood of productivity. Each input not only created its own class of industrial titans, but also rewired how nations grew, competed, and survived. S.L.A.M is not an isolated innovation. It is the next link in a long chain of input revolutions. In the 1970s, oil and energy were the era of extraction. The primary input was fossil fuels like oil, coal, and natural gas. The market kings were Exxon, Chevron, BP, Shell, and Texaco. Energy became the bottleneck for transportation, industrial growth, and geopolitical power. Wars were fought over access. Economies collapsed without it. Human labor was still central, but heavily amplified by energy access. In the 1980s and 90s, capital and finance defined the era of financialization. The primary input was credit, liquidity, and capital leverage. Market kings included Citicorp, American Express, Goldman Sachs, and J.P. Morgan. Deregulation, rising debt, and global trade made financial systems the key input for corporate expansion and asset inflation. Human capital was still vital but increasingly abstracted through financial products. From the 2000s through the 2020s, compute became the essential input. The market kings were Microsoft, Apple, Google, Amazon, Meta, and Nvidia. The internet revolutionized communication, commerce, and coordination. Compute became the substrate for global productivity. Labor transitioned to digital domains. Coders, designers, and data workers became the new working class. Now, in the late 2020s and into the 2030s, synthetic labor is becoming the defining input. Market kings are emerging from Tesla, Figure AI, Nvidia, Amazon Waymo, Anduril, OpenAI, Anthropic, and Boston Dynamics. As human populations shrink and wage pressure rises, autonomous labor becomes the default input of production and service. Labor itself is being replaced or augmented by machines, physically and cognitively. Each shift in input rewired the world. Each crowned a new generation of market leaders. S.L.A.M is next, not as a bet, but as a consequence. This content is brought to you by Bobby Giggs. Promote your brand here and reach a wide audience across platforms like YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Follow the links in the description to get started. Section 4. The anatomy of a S.L.A.M company. A true S.L.A.M company provides one or more core capabilities in the labor abstraction stack: the transformation of traditional human work into scalable, intelligent machine systems. S.L.A.M companies operate across three interlocking layers: the body, which includes hardware, sensors, and mobility systems; the brain, which covers AI models, decision engines, and autonomy stacks; and the backbone, which includes chips, cloud compute, and orchestration infrastructure. Categories and representative companies include: first, humanoid robotics, such as Figure AI, Tesla with its Optimus robot, Sanctuary AI, and Agility Robotics. These firms build human-like robots that can navigate and manipulate in real-world environments. Second, warehouse and industrial automation companies, such as Amazon Robotics, Boston Dynamics, ABB, Fana, KUKA, and Ocado. These systems are highly optimized for repetitive, structured tasks and environments. Third, defense and drone systems, such as Anduril, Skydio, AeroVironment, and Palantir. These firms operate at the edge, in national security and battlefield autonomy. Fourth, robotaxis and autonomous mobility companies, including Waymo, Zoox, Cruise, and Tesla. These platforms represent the mobile face of synthetic labor. Fifth, AI infrastructure and labor cognition engines like OpenAI, Anthropic, xAI, and Google DeepMind. These firms supply the synthetic brains that allow machines to think, reason, and act. And finally, foundational compute and semiconductors, including NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, and TSMC. These firms provide the compute substrate for training, inference, and deployment. Together, these players form the operational anatomy of synthetic labor. Investment and strategic implications. If S.L.A.M is the next great economic input, then the companies building and supplying it stand to capture outsized value over the next decade. Capital flows are already pivoting. Venture capital is shifting from pure software to embodied AI. Corporate M&A is accelerating. Amazon acquired Zoox. Hyundai owns Boston Dynamics. Tesla is vertically integrating Optimus. Governments and sovereign funds are investing in national automation stacks. S.L.A.M is also emerging as a strategic national resource. Countries are reshoring manufacturing with automation, subsidizing chip foundries through legislation like the CHIPS Act, restricting semiconductor exports, and militarizing robotics. Nations that control the S.L.A.M stack, from compute to cognition, will control the future of productivity. For investors, this is a new oil moment. Labor is decoupling from population growth. Wages are no longer the floor for cost. Geography matters less. Robots do not need visas, breaks, or rest. They go where the ROI is highest. To invest in S.L.A.M is to track enablers, analyze cost curves versus human labor, monitor regulatory developments, and identify verticals with high automation potential. Section 6, Societal Shifts and Ethical Questions. S.L.A.M is not just a market event, it is a civilizational transformation. First, labor displacement will occur at scale. Warehouses, trucking, care work, customer service, logistics, all are vulnerable. This is labor itself under pressure. Second, education and retraining may not be sufficient. The speed of change and the limited adaptability of institutions risks leaving many behind. Third, ownership matters. Who owns the robots? If machines do the work and corporations own the machines, then labor becomes capital. That's a dangerous concentration of power. Fourth, ethical and legal frameworks are outdated. Are AI agents tools or entities? Who is liable when they fail? How do we regulate synthetic labor? And fifth, meaning and identity are on the line. Work has historically provided purpose. In a post-labor society, what replaces it? Section 7, S.L.A.M Watch List, the 2030s Basket. This section maps the ecosystem of S.L.A.M companies into a practical taxonomy. In humanoid robotics, companies like Figure AI, Tesla, Sanctuary AI, and Agility Robotics are designing robots to replace general-purpose labor. In warehouse and industrial automation, companies like Amazon Robotics, Boston Dynamics, and Ocado dominate fulfillment and logistics. In defense robotics, Anduril, Skydio, Palantir, and AeroVironment are building battlefield-ready autonomous systems. In autonomous mobility, Waymo, Zoox, Cruise, and Tesla are deploying robotaxis and self-driving infrastructure. In AI cognition, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google DeepMind, and xAI provide the brain layer for synthetic labor systems. And in compute infrastructure, NVIDIA, AMD, Intel, and TSMC deliver the chips that power the entire ecosystem. These companies, public and private, form the working definition of the S.L.A.M basket. Section 8, Conclusion, a civilization rewired. We have entered the age where work no longer requires the worker. The rise of synthetic labor and automated manpower marks a historic turning point. It rivals the arrival of steam, electricity, or the internet. But this time, it's not just tools evolving. It's the very function of labor being transferred out of the human domain. What oil was to combustion, what capital was to leverage, what compute was to logic, S.L.A.M is to motion, service, and scale. S.L.A.M is becoming the primary input of the 2030s. The companies building and coordinating synthetic labor will dominate the next wave of economic value. Nations that master this technology will command productivity, sovereignty, and power. And societies that fail to redefine work, meaning, and contribution may find themselves destabilized. S.L.A.M is not coming. It is already here. The only question is, who owns it?